All right, I want to talk about three-way switches here, what we're doing with the product that we have here. I took these out of the box that was in there. Initially, what you saw before, I had two switches. These are both three-way switches, single pole, double throw. So on this side, you see we have like a bronzish one, a goldish one, and here we have a goldish one. So the one that is opposite color is going to be our hot coming in here, but that's our pole. And the two golds are our throws, okay? So when we had a single pole switch, we had two connections that either connected the two or it didn't connect the two. In this case, what we're running is we ran a power supply from our panel. The power supply was what's considered a two-wire, meaning that the power supply had a two-wire. A two-wire has a black, a white, and a bare wire in it, and the bare wire is our ground wire, right? So that's what's coming in here. So we have a black, a ground, and the brown one on here is considered our neutral. That's our return, okay? So our power supply comes, and when we go ahead, we go feed directly to the hot goes to our hot spot. That's the odd colored screw that was on here, that bronze looking one, okay? And then the neutral just gets nutted up to the next line that comes from the switch to the next switch, and the ground wire gets hooked up to, there's a green ground screw on here, and that grounds everything, this grounds the switch. This switch is a little bit different looking, right? It's red. This is an industrial grade switch. I believe that my buddy who's an electrician, he gives me parts and things for activities that I'm doing around here. I believe that he pulled this out of a hospital. So it's an industrial grade 20 amp switch here. So that's just a heavier duty switch. Anyhow, so we come up, we supply hot here, and then we have what's considered a three-wire. So a three-wire is a little bit different, and it's also a little bit different to cut. So we had the luxury of, and I'll call it luxury, we had the luxury of before using that cutters to strip those out. With this one, we have more wires packed in here. So with this one, I'm going to have to use my knife. And at the very end here, I'm just going to give myself a little bit of let me pull you back so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to come from here. I'm going to just really lightly slide down the line here. And I'm not even trying to go through the outside insulation here. I'm just trying to like score it. And when I get to the very end, I'll cut through. So I can go ahead and peel the two parts apart like that. And then it should, because that spot has scored and weakened, it should be that I can go ahead and just pull this down. Let me see if I can grab pliers to help me grab a hold of that. Now I can just take that insulation and just kind of peel it back. And it'll cut right along that line that I scored all the way down. Okay? And at the end there's numerous ways I can cut that. I'm just going to cut that with these, because it's not really important for right now what that end looks like. It's more to show you what's in the inside here. So the two-wire had a black, a white, and a ground. This one has a black, a white, a ground, and it also has something that's called a traveler. So when we need to have communication between switches, we use a three-wire here. So what does that look like on our board? So we had a wire going to the switch, and now from the switch, our red gets connected to the one throw, single pole, double throw. Our black gets connected to the other one. Our ground gets connected here, and our white comes around to get nutted over here to the other side. So they all come to this side here. And notice that we have our black goes to the same screw that is over on this one, our red goes to the same screw it was over on this one, and we have our throws. When we go out to the light, we go back to using a two-wire. So from our light, we have our hot, our white, and our ground. Our ground will just, I don't have that illustrated here, but the ground's going to come out and ground up into the light here. So the light box is going to be grounded if it's a metal box. And that comes into so black, white, and the ground come down to the light there. So let's follow this path and see how this three-way switch works. So here's our hot. Our hot comes in. If it goes this screw, right now that the connector connects this direction. So it comes across the red goes over, it goes from here to here, and then out to the light. Now let's say that we switch this. So if I take that now and I flip the switch, which means that now it comes to this one. So now it's in contact there. Power comes in, comes across, goes over, and there's nothing connecting it over on this side here, so it's off. Now let's say that I go to this switch and I click this switch. And now it puts this up to this one here. So now it comes in, goes across, goes over there, comes around, and the light's on. I can turn it off here, obviously. I can turn it off here too. If I flip this over like this, now it comes around and it doesn't connect over there to where it's going out to the light. So that's the three-way switch, and that's how it operates. Okay? To show you an example of that, let's go ahead and wire one up. So we have these switches here, right? We have, and they're illustrated on the board the same way I'm going to be doing it here. So we have the two switches. We have the two top screws are where our travelers are, and the bottom screws are going to be where the hot goes in and the hot goes out. So we have our power supply, which is going to be a 6-volt battery. From our power supply, we come from the power, the negative side here, and we go to, now the things that you're not going to see in this, or you're not going to see the grounding and the neutral wire the whole way, but we'll talk about that. So we're trying to follow the path and imagine how that's happening in the switches right now. So we have, the power comes out, and if we go back to our drawing here, power comes out and goes to that opposite colored screw here. So that's right here. Remember, that's the bronze one. And now let's go ahead and clip that right onto that screw. Okay? And then we have to have our travelers that come around from those two areas there, the throws. And they meet up on each side the same way. So if I have, for my top left, and a lot of times they'll call this like your A1 or A2, or they have different terms for this, but basically it's the same throw for the switches here. There and there. And now I do the same thing for these two screws. So I'll take this here and here. Okay? This is not any different than it is when we're using these wires here. It's the same thing. Comes over, and now from this wire here, we want to be able to go out to our light. So there's to our light, right? Power comes in, goes to the pole, has two throws, comes around and goes out to the light. Now, what was also going on in this was we had a way to get back to the positive side here, and that was with our white wire, our neutral. So here's our neutral, goes back to the power supply. The light's on. If I flip a switch, the light's off. I flip the other switch, light's on. And again, this is what's going on. It's going on both sides here is the way that it flips back and forth again. So with what I'm doing in the classroom here, or for our project, I'm putting on, where is the other switch? Here. I'm putting this in. Instead of having, because I have 4 three-ways really, because I have 2 in each one, because I have 2 branches to my circuit. My power comes in, I power both branches of lights there. So I have a 3-way switches that are built together. So you've never seen this many screws on the one side here. But we have the power on this side here. And if you remember our outlets, the outlets had that metal piece that went across them. I only have to apply power to one of these, and it'll apply to both of these switches. Okay? And on the outside here, I have my A1, A2, B1, B2, according to what the instructions are. And I promise you, I read the instructions before I wired the one up here. And I promise you, electricians that have been doing this for 30 years, take a second to read the instructions to figure out what's going on here. I mean, it's relatively straightforward, but you don't want to make a mistake. So you spend the 5 minutes to read the instructions and see what they're labeling everything and where it goes before you start to do that. Okay? So I will admit to you that I went ahead and I did one of the lights on here already, and I didn't do it the way that I was talking about doing it. I was talking about running from the panel, then coming around and having a new power line in here. This, see, here's a 3-wire. Here's a 3-wire, here's a 2-wire. The 2-wire is our power supply. That's the one that goes all the way back to the panel in there. So the 2-wire comes up and that's supplying the power. And I just pulled the power off of a different circuit. So here's my lights in here. 1 branch, 2 branches. And then the other switch is for the lights outside here. So I pulled my hot off of those. So I'm using the same hot. And the reason I can get away with that is because I'm using a 20 amp breaker on here. So I have a lot of gauge, a lot of power in here, a lot of ability. The thickness of my wires and so forth is pretty generous for what it's doing. So I have I ran off of that. The issue I'm going to run into is on this side here, I have to get power from here. So you can see I'm really kind of tight where I have to supply all this power. So I'm going to try to find a new route of getting around things because I want to bring power up to the top there so I can have power upstairs also on this side of the house. This is the stone side of the house. So that's the 3-way switches. You can see the ones that I have in there already. They communicate with these 2 switches, which is if we open these up, you would see that these are the red switches that I just showed you in the other side, the other room there. But it's the same thing. And I'm going to switch this then to have the 3 ways on top of each other and a single switch over here to operate a light outside. Okay? All right, that's a lot of videos this week that I've shown you guys, a lot of time spent just watching the videos. Ask me questions about what's going on with this. Make comments. Something you heard, something you saw. And I'll talk to you guys next week.